All right. It is my honor to introduce Dr. Ambarish Ghosh. He's currently the Ramakrishna Rao Chair Professor at IISc Bangalore. He graduated with a 5-year integrated MSc in physics from the IIT Kanpur. He completed his PhD in physics from Brown University here in the US. After that, he was a postdoctoral fellow at Harvard University. In 2009, he joined IISc Bangalore. His research interests include the study of quantum fluids, plasmonics, driven colloidal systems, and their application in biotechnology. He received the prestigious Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Award for Physics in 2018. Dr. Ghosh, it's our pleasure to have you here. Thanks for sharing your time with us. And all of our team members are very excited to ask you some engaging questions, and we look forward to what you have to say.
Thank you. Thank you, Satvik. Just before we get started, I must tell you, I'm absolutely thrilled to be here. In a way, in you, I see myself perhaps 20 years ago. I was also a PhD student in the US, and I'm pretty sure some of the questions and thoughts that you are having, I've had that in some form or the other many years ago. So I think we can be completely informal, and I'll try to answer as much as possible that I can. So look forward to this discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Ghosh. Thank you. I'll let Shaunak take the lead.
Hi, my name is Shaunak. I'm a second-year master's student in the bioengineering program at Northeastern in Boston. So let's get started. So my question was, what was your inspiration to enter the field of physics? And can you also tell us about your journey from IIT to Brown to Harvard and now back home in IISc?
Okay. I took Air India. Is that an answer? I'm sorry. Bad joke. Extremely bad joke. But I had to. Okay. So I must tell you so I think in my entire family, I think I was the second one to go into physics. My elder brother, he is also a very well accomplished physicist in India, and he's quite well known in physics. So he was the first one. And I think right when I was in the 10th or 11th standard, he decided to go into physics. And as all siblings do, I decided that because he's doing physics, I will not do physics. I must be doing something else. So I wanted to do math. And then at some point, actually it was, so he really inspired me to be an academic in a major way. And he was extremely patient, and he still is very patient with me. But at some point, I don't know, somehow I started following him unknowingly and decided to go into physics. There was a certain teacher in my school who definitely influenced me a lot. And I remember he was the first one. I don't know how many of you have gone into JE preparations and all that many years ago. I went through that many years ago. There was a book by Irodov. It's a problem book of physics, okay? And that to me was a big life-changing experience. And I sort of, I would start in the evening solving a problem, and suddenly I would actually forget everything else. And I mean, I never stayed up beyond 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and then everybody would be suddenly, surprised that I was trying to solve a problem. And maybe solve one problem an evening was all that I could handle. But I think at that point, I realized that, I would enjoy doing this for the rest of my life. So that continued. And, IIT was a wonderful experience. I spent 5 years there, integrated MSc. And IIT was kind of interesting because I was a minority there. I was in IIT Kharagpur doing integrated MSc in physics, while I think I would say 5% of us were doing science, but the other 95% were doing engineering. And they were talking very different languages. They were talking about getting jobs. And I was surprised that, how would a physicist get a job? And it's surprising. And that really was one of the good things about being in the IIT. I did get a job. I was almost ready to go and write softwares for British Telecom. But then at the same point, I also thought, well, I do enjoy doing physics, so why not also apply for a scholarship? So I got a couple of calls from US and ended up at Brown. And Brown, it was a bumpy career, bumpy ride. I was not ready to do research. As I think back, I realized that. But then in some time, I had an amazing PhD advisor, one of the top scientists in the world. I was lucky to have worked with him. And then he was very patient with me, and I did manage to finish my PhD. I did do reasonably well at the end and got a postdoc. And I was again lucky, super lucky. The person I worked with as my postdoctoral mentor is also one of the world leaders in that field. And he's only about 1 year older than me, but I mean, his work has really changed a lot of fields in some sense. So I really have been lucky to be family-wise, you know, then PhD and then postdoc associated with some really fantastic people as my mentors. So that has made a big difference, and I'm truly thankful that I've had that experience, that pleasure. So I hope. And then I came back and I continue to work with extremely brilliant colleagues at IISc, and that probably is my biggest reason of being at IISc. Colleagues.
Oh, that's great. So the next one is, how has your experience been studying in India and the US, and how has this helped you shape your career? And can you also talk about your collaborations, international collaborations your lab has, and how have you been able to develop this network over the years?
Yeah, so that's interesting actually. I mean, see, one of the things that to me was a big shock was when I first entered the US. You know, I think I'm talking about 20 years ago. I mean, right now you guys are far more educated about how the US works. You know, I wasn't. I mean, of course, we saw a few Hollywood movies, and we all know how accurate a picture that portrays of the US. So, you know, that's all. So I was very naive in some sense. So there was a cultural shock initially that probably lasted for perhaps a couple of months or so. But then it really opened my mind in a major way. And I think coming to the US as a student, definitely you get education. I mean, the US education is definitely the top of the world. But also, you know, the international exposure that you get in the US schools, that is unmatched. I mean, especially, you know, I went to the physics department at Brown. I think there were about 20 students. This was the first meeting that I had the day I joined Brown with all the other 18 of my class members. There were 2 Americans, 1 Indian, probably 3 Chinese, 1 Greek guy, 4 Russians. And then, I mean, you know, you do the math. I think there was 1 Romanian, probably 2 Koreans. I mean, it ended up being about 20. And that to me was the world in this tiny little room, you know, and sort of taking physics courses all together. It doesn't matter where you are. You have to solve that damn problem and, you know, submit that assignment. I mean, nothing is more equalizing and more, how do you say, international than that. You know? That makes you, and the US schools are absolutely that's one of the best parts about being in a US school, I must tell you. Of course, then comes the education. I mean, I'm not taking it away. I mean, US education, the universities, the professors are, of course, the topmost in the world. But for me, that first shock of this, you know, the world in the room is really something that I cherish even now, and I remember. And I can tell you the friendship that happened actually continues. So it's amazing that you asked me this question. So one of my classmates, one of the Chinese classmates, I continue to be very good friends with him. And he actually just spent 2 years with me at IISc, and he just very recently moved to Prague. He's a scientist, you know, he had a visiting position that we created in our department, and he was there. We have worked together, and in fact, we published a bunch of papers together with him. And, you know, this is a 20-year-old experience. My PhD advisor, he just retired, but he's still actively doing research. He visits me pretty much every year. And, you know, we have, in fact, joint grants with him that we work together. And right now I'm planning to go and visit him in about a couple of months once the COVID situation clears out. And there is a plan that one of his students will come and work with me. The postdoctoral mentor and we are probably going to arrange a conference together. And so the connections just continues. And, you know, this is one of the best things, the academic network that you do and how international it is stays with you all your life. So So, please, while you are there, all the students, my message would be to nurture that network, and this network will be there with you forever.
As you said, networking is key, and all of us have experienced this at some point.
Well, you are networking with your friends, and that's the best part.
Yeah. Next question is, in India, we all experience that only a small fraction of students have the opportunity to pursue their education in premier institutes like IITs, IISr or IISc and other top universities. But all of us have, there are also a lot of talented and hardworking, motivated individuals who do not make it there, even though they spend years studying for these competitive exams. So do you have any advice for them?
Actually, before that, I must say something probably not politically correct. I'm completely annoyed at this competitive exams. I think these are burning students out. They are not a good test of merit. And I feel that we have really taken it to the extreme. Okay. I mean, firstly, the 2% of the students that you are choosing out of 100, you are ruining 2 years of their life. You are basically teaching them how to solve exams. I mean, these are extremely smart students. Don't get me wrong. But somehow the societal pressure that has developed around this IIT JEE and stuff like that, I mean, it has really gone to the extreme. I mean, we have to somehow reinvent how we do these competitive exams, okay? And so I'm very negative about it. And I can tell you over my last 10 years in IISc, I've had the chance to work with the top IIT students, top IISc students, and also top students from what you would call maybe not the top tier, maybe the mid-tier universities. I can tell you there are students from the mid-tier universities who are as good to any of the IITians, any of the IISc students. Okay, so in a way we are choosing 2 out of 5 equals. That's the way I look at it. Probably in that particular day, one person did a little bit better, and that's it. So there are very little differences in basic caliber. Now, with respect to the message towards students who are there in this sort of what you call mid-tier universities, not the absolute top tier ones, I would say the access to education, quality of education has definitely reduced. It's much better than before. That's what I mean. So in the past, probably only a handful of people would get access to really good lectures by top professors and stuff like that. That is not the case anymore. Thanks to online, I mean, now, I know a lot of people coming from probably not this top tier schools. They are able to access very good lecture notes, very good YouTube lectures and stuff like that, and they're educating themselves. So actually the differences will become smaller and smaller as time progresses. So my advice to them is, entrance exam is just like, I would almost compare it with a coin toss, just tossing a coin. And I would not worry much about where they are, but advise them to develop themselves, with what they have in their access online. They can really improve their capabilities to a much higher level than what we think they can do.
Thank you. That's a very interesting point. I think all of us are facing those issues. A lot of our friends are also facing the issues back home. So I would like to hand over the stage to Shashank to continue.
Actually, just before I wanted to add something to this. It's kind of interesting because, we take our PhD students, and in our PhD students, quite often what we do is we take exams like GATE and JAM. These are sort of nationwide exams, postgraduate exams. You will be surprised, but the performance of the students in their PhD has zero correlation with their GATE scores. We have done that. We have actually done the analysis. There is no correlation, and this is a statistically significant fact. We have done it with approximately 200, 300 students over the last 10 years, and we found zero correlation. So, I mean, all that some of these exams do is to tell you probably that you can solve certain types of problems. It does not tell you anything about the research potential. So we must remember that.
Thank you, Dr. Ghosh. Like, I can relate so much with all the insights that you have given us. And we wanted to get a little in depth with your experience as a young faculty in India at IISc. And also one of the pressing issues that and concerns, I would say, is to understand how faculty members acquire funding for their labs and how could students actually benefit from your experiences.
Yeah, so definitely one of the things is I started as a young faculty many years ago. I'm not so young anymore. That's been a big difference. Yeah. One of the things that I have realized over the last, I would say about 11 years now, fundamentally, the system that you see in the US is quite similar to what we have in India. There are certain subtle differences. So one is, of course, with respect to the funding in US, professors, one of the biggest difficulties for funding is to raise funding for manpower, for the students, right? To pay for the students. And that is one stress that we in India do not have, because most of them are funded by the government. With respect to other things, for example, if you need major infrastructure, this has to come from the government in most cases, although there are some institutes who try to help their young faculty members. So especially in last couple of years, the startup funds for the young faculty members have gone up tremendously. I would say more than 20 times. So, you know, the amount that I got back in 2009 is approximately 20 times less than what the newest hire in my department asked for, and hopefully he will get it. Okay, so people understand the fact that you have a young faculty member and his time is valuable, his or her time is valuable. So you got to support him or her right away so that the person ensures and gets the research program going. So that consciousness is already there in IISc, it's already there in IITs, it's already there in all of the ISRs. And I think it's probably a matter of 2 to 3 years that all the other institutions will also follow. In addition, the government also gives startup funds to people who are just starting out. And some of them are unfortunately not such a large amount, but at least it will get you going. In addition, this has also been a very welcome change over the last 10 years that I've seen. And this is especially true for experimentalists, is that there are creation of very large facilities. So these facilities can be accessed by everybody, and quite often for young faculty members, the charges will be waived. So there are many schemes like that. Of course, a lot of these things, these policies are evolving, these procedures are taking place. But I can certainly tell you over the last 10 years, I can see the struggles of a young faculty member have significantly reduced during this period. In a way, I think it probably happened because there was a large amount of funding came to India around 2005, 2006 onwards, okay? And in a way, 2010, 12 onwards, we have started getting benefits of that funding. So that has been a very welcome change.
Right. Yeah, I can relate with so much because currently I'm a graduate student at New York University and currently collaborating with a researcher in University of Southern California. So looking at the startup ecosystem in the United States. So that's really encouraging to know that such schemes are also coming up in India.
Yeah.
And following a question to that I had was about certain advantages, disadvantages that you probably have observed as a person in academia in India versus from your experiences in other countries. And
sorry, Shashank, can you repeat the question? I'm having a little difficulty hearing you. Maybe I'll increase the volume.
Sure. Yeah. So the question was about some advantages, disadvantages you observed as a faculty in India versus in other countries. And in connection to that, what differences do you see between a researcher faculty's jobs in a top tier institute in India versus other Indian institutions?
Okay. So the first one is about differences between India and the other countries, right? Now, I guess what you would like to know is my thoughts about difference between India and perhaps the developed world, which probably, see, I'm not too aware of the situation in Japan, okay? But I am reasonably well aware of the situation in both US and Europe. Let me first tell the advantage. So the advantage of working in India, probably it's less cutthroat. You know, you will probably, the academic environment is probably less stressful. At least you can choose to take less stress. Let's put it this way. How much stress you take is in your hands, of course. And one tremendously high advantage is the freedom to choose problems. And this is something that I have heard a lot from the US, my US colleagues, not so much from the European colleagues, is in US quite often the funding is very much connected to the current bandwagon that you have to follow, you know, what is the current hot topic. And as a result, very often, and I think this is one of the, I see the problems of the US system, that forces people to quite often mold their research in a certain direction. In India, that happens a little slowly and perhaps in a little bit more delayed manner. So it's less stressful. Okay, so this is definitely an advantage of working in India, at least according to me. Disadvantage, well, I would not say funding-wise, I should not complain. Okay, I think again, funding-wise, in terms of equipments, we probably do not have as much as the Western world, but at least I can do most of the experiments that I want to do. Okay, what I think is the biggest difficulty is with the Indian government system in which the funding is highly inflexible. You know, so in US, for example, if you get a funding, you can choose whether, you know, if a situation arises in the lab, you can say that, okay, I wanted to buy this, but now I have got this new result, so I must buy this. In India, that would be difficult. So to give you an example, you know, I have some travel funds, and I have tremendous amount of travel funds. In principle, for the next 1 month, maybe right now is not a good example, but in normal times, I can go to Delhi every day and come back. Okay, I have that much travel funds. You know, and you can do the math. It's actually, you know, it's not completely cheap. However, from Bangalore to Sri Lanka, I would not be able to go using these funds because it will be called a foreign travel. So those are the type of strange archaic government rules that somehow makes our life a little difficult. So you learn how to deal with it. But if you are coming from the US, this will be one of the biggest problems that you will see. What you sort of assume that, okay, I will do this, I will do that, I'll do that. You will suddenly see, oops, how can this be a red tape issue? You know? So there are strange bureaucratic red tapes that you have to be aware of and learn how to deal with. So that I think is still one of the major disadvantages. The other disadvantage is, of course, you know, the Western world has a much more set research culture. So in general, people know the ethics of collaboration and all that, which I think is still there only in the top tier Indian institutions. It is slowly percolating down to the mid-tier, but perhaps it will take some time. Okay, so that research culture. And then, yeah, perhaps I would also mention that, you know, one of the biggest, I'm sure you've all heard the phrase, in India, the common phrase is jugaad, right? You want to solve a problem, you somehow do this and that and make it. Now that doesn't work in research. In research, you really try to actually attack the problem in a systematic manner and solve it. So when in my lab, my students come and start doing experiments, I think the first lesson that I give them is, you know, this is, you're trying to solve the problem. You're just not trying to come up with a temporary solution. So this is something that I feel is part of the mindset that I still consider to be a disadvantage.
Yeah, that's really insightful, Dr. Ghosh. And regarding the students in your lab, you just mentioned. So my next question is actually related to that. Like during your research, like at times, any student who's starting their research in any kind of a field, they always experience, they may experience some kind of roadblock. And my question is, has there ever been a time when you doubted your research path? And from your experience, could you give young scientists some advice or pointers on how they can deal with those difficulties that they, I would say, encounter in their research fields, and how they can tackle them?
I guess for me, actually, in fact, I took a long time because I changed my PhD advisor. So I started working with somebody after my first year. And after working for a couple of months, I mean, I just did not enjoy the problem. You know, it was, at least at that point, it appeared to be something that's too applied and I was not having fun. And also it was mostly programming and I really wanted to do experiments. So that was a very difficult time because I remember I went out of that lab. I did not want to work. I went and talked to the chair, and the chair gave me a TA. So at least thankfully I did not, I had some funding. And then after some time, I joined my PhD advisor. So that was a very stressful time because, I'm sure you can have sympathy for my past in that sense, right? I mean, it's not easy to leave a lab and join, right? I mean, it's always a very stressful affair. So that was very stressful, I remember. And, I just took a very harsh decision. So that was my solution to that problem. A little bit later, about 2 or 3 deep into the research, I had set up my whole experiment and absolutely nothing worked. And I think it was, I would say about a stretch of at least 1.5 years, and not a single experiment was working. I was not able to measure what I wanted to measure. Whatever I was measuring was absolutely obvious, nothing interesting. It was such a tough period. And I had a very supportive advisor and who said that, well, continue, try this, if not, then try that, be methodical about it. And then just suddenly everything clicked and I actually had a reasonably good PhD. Everything worked out beautifully. The papers came out, I got a postdoc and all of that. It just happened. So I guess that particular problem, the solution was being at it. And I was enjoying what I was doing. I never had any doubt about that. But I was doubting whether I was good enough to do any research because I was not able to make any inroads in any of the problems. So I guess those are the 2 difficult ones. And then I guess coming to India, coming back to India, it's a different type of a problem, right? You are trying to adjust after so many years in the US with a new lifestyle. And suddenly you have to worry about funding, you have to think about research. So I don't even know how those first 2 years went after I came back. It's probably the busiest period of my life, at least at that point. So I don't remember much of it. So yeah, but otherwise, I think overall it has been okay.
Thank you, Dr. Ghosh. Those were really insightful comments. And I will let Mruganka take over from here.
Thank you, Shashank. This is Mruganka. I'm a student, second year PhD student in University at Buffalo. So basically, my question. Okay, so that was really insightful, whatever you said, and perseverance is the key, is what I learned from all of them. My question is like, could you share some of the current research work which you are involved in or working towards? So how do you see the future of biophysics and biomedical applications evolving in India at this point of time?
Actually, I do a little bit of, I was trained as a physicist, but actually after coming back to India, I have been involved in a lot of collaborative research with biologists, which has been a fantastic experience for me. There is a lot of scope for both biophysics as well as biomedical research in India. It's one of the, actually, I think it's probably one of the most heavily funded areas right now. And I'm absolutely confident that it will continue to be that way. We have some real stalwarts. I'm again, I'm probably more aware of the physics side of things. We have actually some of the world leaders in the areas of biophysics. I mean, there are faculty members, there are research groups at NCBS, IISc, who are considered to be absolute pioneers in some of these areas. And I really mean across the entire world. So I think the future is going to be extremely bright for this type of, if you're talking of fundamental research. With respect to more applied research, if you're thinking about things along the lines of biomedical applications, again, things are improving, but perhaps what Indian government needs to think about is to reduce the red tape, because anything to do with biomedicine, there are approvals, there are procedures that have to be streamlined significantly. And there is a lot of effort that is happening along those lines, but we do have a longer way to go there. Sure. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, definitely. So extending this question, definitely like the research is in the basic, but it seems that your work is also interdisciplinary. So how is this interdisciplinary research different from more independent core basic research in a specific domain?
Yeah, I can tell you one of the, I mean, definitely there is much more interdisciplinary research these days than before, right? I mean, it is getting far more researchers are coming into this field. And also, I think the reason is there has been some major successes in solving some long-standing problems when you get people from 2 or 3 disciplines come together. See, from very personal perspective, for me, I use physics tools, engineering tools to solve problems in biology. It is great fun. And one of the things that I learned when I started doing it, for me, it really started, very frankly, after coming back to India, is you have to be good in languages. And what I mean here is you have to learn how to speak different scientific languages. So one of the lessons that I sort of learned the hard way is, let's say you're talking to a biologist, and if you cannot go and throw Schrodinger's equation at him each and every instant, and in return he's going to bombard you with Latin names of that you can't even pronounce. So you have to learn. Maybe you have to learn to listen a little carefully, patiently, and then also very patiently explain what you are, take your time to explain in that language that he would be able to understand. I mean, you have to take your ego out of the table entirely, say clearly that, hey, I don't know this, and also tell and explain the concepts easily. And once you have crossed that initial barrier, you can do real wonders. I mean, I can tell you, for me, some of the major problems that we have, some of the major successes in my research career have come in collaboration with other people. And I have no shame in saying that, he has done this part, I have done this part, and we have brainstormed on this part. And I think this has been also one of the most fun experiences that I have had. And also, I must tell you, I do have a little bit of a core research program that I do. Even when you are trying to do core research problem these days, don't shy away from other fields. Because if you look at world, the history of science, quite often the major breakthroughs in core research came because, some idea has been borrowed from a different field. You just somehow you were reading something in the newspaper about some different departments, major discovery, and that idea is going to click you. So as long as you are curious, have an open mind, I think that's the key point. That's why we are doing academics, right? So that's what
thank you, Dr. Ghosh. I myself am working in the interdisciplinary area. I hope this is helpful to others as well who are working in the similar domains. So now coming to the next question, we at Indian Student Hub hope to contribute towards the US-Indian STEM ecosystem. So how do you think that we can encourage the Indian researchers or scientists to contribute to the development of STEM research in India?
I guess I'm so glad that you are asking that question. I think thank you. I do want to suggest many things that you can do, and I think your contributions are important. I think first and foremost, please keep contact with your alma mater, okay? Your colleges, your professors, maybe also your batchmates, your juniors. Please keep contact with them, and just your presence can be an inspiration to many. I think that's important, okay? So just a simple hello, I don't know, a simple WhatsApp joke forward probably can do a trick. Okay, so please keep in contact. The other thing that you must do is when you come back, now that you have, you're doing your PhD, you probably have gotten a result. So then when you get back, contact, travel, plan your travel in a way so that you can talk about your research in whatever university that you can make a contact with. So let's say, I don't know where you are from. So let's say you are somewhere close to Mumbai. Maybe there is this faculty member at IIT Mumbai with whom you foresee you might find this work interesting. So write an email and go and give a talk. Maybe it will be just a talk in the group. But I have done this in the past. I can tell you there has been people that I've met in the conferences and I found their research, Indian PhD students. I found their work to be closely related to either my group's work or maybe some other faculty members' work. And I told them that, next time when you, come here, just drop me a line and we'll arrange for a talk. It probably is a half a day for you, maybe one day at most, but it makes a difference. It makes a difference in multiple ways. Firstly, of course, you get your network. Networking is important. Secondly, your work and how you approach your problem, what you have done, how you share your experience will make a difference of the PhD students and undergraduates who are working in India. They will suddenly, through your eyes, get exposed to the US system. That will make a big difference. So spending a little time, having a cup of tea, that will make a big difference. And finally, I would like to say that, please follow Indian science and technology news. I'm sure we all follow Indian politics. I'm not talking of politics. I'm talking of science and technology. If there is a government science and technology policy that you do not like, protest. If you like, appreciate. But be involved. Express your opinion. I think that's very important. Unless you do that, you cannot complain later. Right? That's very important. So please be involved.
Right. This was really helpful. Yes, definitely. So can you share some of the words of wisdom and motivation? This is the last question to students during these difficult times where the opportunities are scarce and COVID-19 has affected everyone's life.
Yeah, I don't know what to say here. I must tell you, this is an extremely difficult time for everybody. I have students who are eager to come back to the campus. Their work is getting affected, but they're not when they're able to come back. And I can completely understand. Especially for many of you, I suppose many of you are at the junction of your research careers, maybe also your personal lives, and suddenly everything is at a standstill, right? I understand how anxious you can be. I guess, I don't know, I suppose I can use some cliche and say, hang in there. There will be some sunshine after the rain. I think maybe think about the bright side of things. See, all said and done, come on, we are having a meeting online, right? While you are in the US, I'm in India. We have food on our table. We have a bed to sleep on. And there are many who do not. I can understand that you are getting worried about your careers. But, one of the things that COVID has taught you is that life is very uncertain, right? So maybe what you are doing right now as an alternative is going to be the defining thing in your career later. You never know. So, use this time judicially, whatever best you can do. And then, as those curveballs come towards you, you know how to handle. And, so perhaps we should think about the big picture, be thankful and do the best with what we can. I really think I completely understand and empathize, and the only thing I can say is, my wishes and support to all of you in this journey.
Thank you, Dr. Ghosh. I would hand over to Sonakshi.
I think I'll probably have a few words to say here. It's been absolutely thought-provoking, and I think you have addressed a lot of questions that some of us have at the back of our mind, but we haven't really discussed that with other professors or other researchers. So thanks for spending time with us, Dr. Ghosh. If you're okay to probably answer a few other questions that students or others might have, that will be great. Is that okay?
Sure, absolutely.
I have a question. So I'm actually a PhD student. I'm still early in my PhD career, but at the end, I'm aspiring to probably apply for academic positions in India. There are a lot of online content that talks about applying for academic roles in the US or in European universities. Can you probably give some insights about how academic hiring works in India and how students who are not in India can apply, and how that entire process works?
Okay. Now, you are thinking about an academic faculty position, I would say, right? That's what. So again, almost all the institutions do it differently. although right now more and more institutions are trying to make the process similar. Again, the process is actually not fundamentally different from that of the US. There are a lot of structural similarities. So in most of the places, there is an online form that you have to fill up, and you would have to submit that form where, what's important is your CV, what's important is your research program, and stuff like that. Okay, so a similar application process. Now, unfortunately, a lot of the institutions have not gotten the whole online and how to deal with this. Not all the departments are equally progressive. So maybe some of the older departments will take much longer time, and some of the newer departments will take perhaps shorter time to get back. Do not lose hope and keep on trying to contact professors, maybe the chairpersons and stuff like that, okay? And say that, hey, my application has been sent. I'm interested in your department. When do you think I can hear? And it will probably take a couple of months. Unlike the US, where there is a very definite time period in which every year this happens, in India, it's sort of rolling all the time, okay? So that's one thing you have to remember. Now, once your CV has been discussed in the department or perhaps also at the institute level, depending on the interest of the department, they will probably ask for an interview or a talk. And this is typically what happens in most of the places that I know of. And then, at least in my department, the standard process is the person comes, gives a talk, and then after first you have to give about 50 minutes of research talk, and then subsequently you go and meet all the faculty members individually, and we are really, really religious about it, that we see whether, we try to talk to the person and see if we're able to communicate, because we are talking about a colleague for next 30 years, right? So it's a very serious thing. And then subsequently we probably meet again, and over lunch typically, where the person will discuss the research proposal. So not what he has done, but what he wishes to do. And that would be a point when things can get a little bit deep, so people will really ask, okay, you are trying to do this research, but, so what? How would this change humanity? And you have to answer it. So that sort of shows what your vision is in the longer term. And then if everything goes well, then quite often I can tell you, there are discussions within the department, and then again, the person can be called back for further clarifications, typically online. Okay, so this is what happens. So the overall, this is the standard protocol that also happens in the US in a way, where you give a faculty job talk, you meet with the faculty members, and you give some sort of an in-depth analysis of your future research. So the overall processes are not the same. Perhaps it takes a little bit longer time, and depending on the department, it is possible that things will get a little slow. So I think it's just, don't take it personally, but just keep on banging on the door. I think that's my suggestion to everybody who's looking for a faculty job.
That's very insightful. And your suggestion for PhD students when they visit home to kind of meet research groups that are interesting for you and give talks, I think that will be very helpful on the long run as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can tell you there were situations in which I unfortunately cannot take names here, but there have been there was 2 PhD students who came and gave a talk in our department. And we sort of thought then and there that, we must keep an eye on this guy. And then as and when he/she does a little bit of postdoctoral experience, we are going to give him or her a job offer. And, so people are always looking for talents in that sense, especially if they think that the person fits in very well with the department.
That's definitely true. And that's true even for students, I guess. If you want to have some teammate working with your research project, it's good to kind of see if we can, gel together and get some work done. That's great. If you have time, maybe we can take 1 or 2 more questions if anyone has any questions.
I have a question. Even I'm in the early years of my PhD. So at what point do you understand whether you want to go for a job, industrial job, or you want to pursue further in academia?
I'm sorry, can you please repeat? I had a little difficulty here.
Sorry. So I am in my early years of PhD. So at what point do you understand whether you want to continue for an industrial job, or you want to, pursue a PhD, a academic position further?
I don't know the answer to that, okay, personally. The reason being, for me, I sort of probably knew right from the beginning, and it never changed for me, that I always wanted to be an academic. But I have seen it for a few of my students, okay? And through my students' eyes, I can tell you, for many of them, it has come sort of somewhere in the middle, okay? And at least 2 or 3 of my students, I have seen that they found out approximately in their 3rd year or so, typically after their first paper, in fact, that they realized that, well, I think I would like to try something in industry. And yeah, I think in my limited experience, I have had twice this sort of situation.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I've been focused on this national education policy, and I'd love to see if you have any thoughts on implementation, especially on the science research side, and how maybe some of the PhD students could come back and start labs in India. So anything on the national education policy worth sharing?
See, I have seen the policy documents, sort of snippets of it. I have not, of course, read the entire document. Whatever I have seen, I like the ideas. I think the ideas are modern, and I know that has been developed over a long period of time, and I completely support. But the devil is always in the details. So how are you going to implement it is really the key question. And that really is the biggest challenge that the government would have to take up, because you are struggling with age-old policies and practices, and you're suddenly going to change it. Now, if you have to change it, you either have to incentivize it in some way, give incentives for making these changes to the different colleges or universities. Typically, force doesn't work. I mean, the sort of punishments typically do not work, I feel. So you have to somehow come up with a system of incentives. Somehow you have to show that there is a certain benefit, and maybe a little bit of trying to, maybe by policymakers, educators, if they actually move around and interact with the different educational institutions and tell them, these are the highlights of the policy, and there is going to be a long-term benefit if you implement those, and put a structure in place. And I think that is going to be the main challenge. I am generally hopeful. I think it will be a good thing. It probably will take longer than what the government thinks. This is my personal opinion.
Do we have any other questions?
I had a question. Looking at the Indian growth of a lot of incubators and hackathons coming, and people moving towards startups, a lot of people dropping out of university or after their courses going for startups as groups. So do you think this is a good way to go? Like, has it actually impacted the research and the academia, or it's good for India's growth?
Actually, I think it's good and bad in some sense. It's probably good that people are considering the idea that, you can stop studying and actually take such a bold step. Of course, they also need to understand that not every dropout becomes Bill Gates. I mean, you have to also realize that, and I'm sure they will. But it's a welcome change in society. I mean, I can tell you, even a couple of years ago, this wasn't the case. I mean, I don't know how my family would have reacted if I told them that I'm dropping out of IIT and I have decided to make an app. And so I don't know. I have to ask my mom. But this has been a change in society, and I think it's a healthy change. I really like that part, that young people have the freedom and they have the mindset to try risky things. It's great. The bad part, I worry, is I think people are taking the easy route. And what I mean is, it is true that making an app and a startup, it takes innovation, but it's a quick money, probably. It's a quick thing. On the other hand, I would have liked to young people take harder problems. more difficult problems. I mean, I would have loved to say that, a young person, maybe a graduate who's coming, I don't know, and say that, okay, I'm not going to take up a job, but I would want to come up with, I don't know, come up with a vaccine of, of some deadly virus, or something, or, really think about, if I can make this certain tool that's going to do rapid testing significantly easier. People are shying away from the the hardware type of, the tough challenges. And in a way, that is the bad side of some of this, I feel. But maybe there will be a balance that will come at some point. So let's be hopeful.
Thank you, Dr. Ghosh. I think we might have time for one more question. If no one has a question, I have one, but I'll wait for others. Okay, so I guess I get the last question. So my work is quite practical. I study spam, abuse, and fraud in the phone network here in the US. I and my research group, we work very closely with our industry partners to kind of get this data and to understand how things work. How does industry collaboration work in India? Do academics regularly collaborate with industries? Do they also get funds? Sometimes just the data. Can you maybe share some insights there?
So since we are not recorded, I guess I can afford to make politically incorrect remarks.
Yeah, I think it's still going, but
it's okay. I think it's okay. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to be that incorrect, and I think most people will agree with me. See, there are a lot of MNCs that are working in India, okay, and they're subsidiaries. And one of the things that I worry about, and this is somebody, because you are you are collaborating with the industries there. And let's say you come back to India and you have decided to probably collaborate with the subsidiary who is working in India, right? Perhaps. I'm giving a hypothetical situation. One of my experiences, and this has been a little bit of a, I would say, disappointing experience, is that the subsidiaries of many of the MNCs are not empowered enough in India. So quite often, these are the guys who are just doing the back-end job. So the level at which they would like to collaborate with you is probably not going to be commensurate with the level of intellectual participation that you would expect in a collaboration, you see. So be prepared for that. So that is something that I have experienced, unfortunately, a lot. In fact, we do have a few technologies from our lab, and in most of the cases, we have had much more success connecting or licensing them with US-based or Western companies rather than Indian companies. Most of the Indian companies, unfortunately, are not ready to collaborate. And this is even true in sort of hardware type of things. In software, probably there is a little bit more, but this is an issue. But software is slightly better. This much I can give you a personal message to you, Satvik.
Thank you, Dr. Ghosh. I think we are almost approaching our end of the hour, but the discussion has been really productive. And I can tell you personally, like, some pointers that you've shared helps me make decisions on what I want to do. And I'm sure that's the case with a lot of us. Again, thanks a lot for taking the time. I know it's 11 p.m. in your local time, staying awake so late and spending time with us. It's really a privilege to have you here with us. And I hope that we'll have some more engaging discussions sometime in the near future.
Absolutely. I look forward to that, and it's wonderful meeting all of you, although over the clouds right now, but hopefully there will be an opportunity to meet in person as well in some time. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Ghosh. Thank you, everyone.